This is a session where we spend time talking about navigating the selective college admission process. If you haven't gone through the process before, you always hear about schools that have like a low admission rate, and you have to do all these things in order to gain admission, but no one ever tells you exactly what those things are. And so I'm actually going to break that down piece by piece by going through the application and telling you what you're submitting, how colleges perceive it, and how you can make that piece as strong as possible to make you most competitive in admission. Selectivity. So here's the thing. When we say selectivity, it means a lot of different things to different folks. I'm going to give you a few examples. Princeton Review. This is a guide that a lot of people use in order to find colleges. The way that they talk about selectivity, they say selectivity is basically determined by a lot of things that colleges will report to you. Class rank, test score, average high school GPA. In their opinion, all of those things make up what we call selectivity. Now, one of the things I always tell people is the most common example of selectivity is the rankings, right? Like US News and World Report. So US News and World Report measures about 7 things in order to come up with their top whatever list, top 100. I'm going to show you one of their criteria. You're going to tell me what it is, and you're going to tell me what proportion of their ranking is based on this. So for example, the first thing I'm going to show you is graduation and retention. What do you think graduation and retention is? What do you think they're measuring when they say graduation and retention? Percent of students that graduate in 4 years. W. Dahlia, you get a prize. See how easy that was? Now, how many percentage points do you think they're allocating towards graduation and retention, if you had to guess? 22%. Graduation rate performance. What do you think that is? The answer is totally not fair. So the graduation rate performance is, it takes their actual graduation rate, and then based on other factors, what US News thinks their graduation rate should be. And if they're overperforming or underperforming. But how many percentage points do you think are allocated towards graduation rate performance, the mystery number, the mystery component? Molly, oddly enough, your number is exactly right. 8% is what it is. So the next criteria on here is social mobility. And I'll just tell you, social mobility is essentially what proportion of students are Pell eligible. This is a category, economic. Ripley, you get a prize, exactly. And so this is what proportion of their students fall within certain income standards. How many percentage points do you think are allocated for social mobility? Social mobility, 5%. 5%. Faculty resources, what do you think they're measuring there? Think about faculty resources. Resources might not be the best name to talk about what they're measuring. Salary, Florian, you get that. It is primarily how much faculty are paid, and to some extent, what investment on resources they have. Do y'all care about that? How many percentage points? 20. That's a lot, right? Financial resources. I'm going to make this one easy. This is money in the bank. This is endowment. How many percentage points? That is 10%. So the next one is student excellence. And that one is essentially their acceptance rate. How many percentage points would you give for student excellence? 10%. So whether or not a place is selective and somewhat their academic profile, this takes into consideration. And the next thing is alumni giving. And my question is a little bit different than what it is, because it's clearly measuring people giving money, but do they care about the percentage of people, or do they care about the amount? And so they look at, Robin, you got it first, the percent. And so if all of my alumni give $1, then we're going up in the rankings. So what percent would you give it? How many percentage points? Some of you are going to do the math. And the answer is 5%. So expert opinion. What do you think expert opinion is? Like, whose opinion are they asking? Who's the expert in this scenario? One of you said presidents of college. Yeah, they ask presidents of colleges, they ask me. I'm the expert. I won't tell you the number because you can do the math. It does total 100, so it's 20 is the percentage. But here's the deal. I sincerely think this is what all colleges want. You to be on campus, hanging out with friends, super happy, having a great time. And honestly, when you're hanging out on campus like this, you're not thinking a lot about how much the college has in the bank. You're just enjoying the time that you have with your friends, learning, and a really great experience. That ends up being the most important thing, among other important things. So I'm going to hit on the search, the evaluation process, and how to choose. And the first thing I'm going to do is give you this list, visit anywhere. And so when I say visit anywhere, start large and end small, I'm actually not talking about visit large campuses. Do large events. I would consider this a large event. There's almost 50 of you here. We're not having a one-on-one conversation, but you're learning a lot about something, and other folks are going to ask questions that you want to know the answer to. And all you have to do is sit there and chill and get all the information. Open houses, these large events are great ways to start because it's low pressure, but you get a lot of information. And then as you go on through the year, you pick smaller events. You might pick like a student group where you know there's going to be 10 people there asking someone questions. Find out how to make yourself compelling. This is very important for selective colleges. What does that mean? How do you articulate what value you're bringing to the institution, what you do really well? It's not easy talking about ourselves sometimes. And so we have to get in the habit of saying like, these are the things I do, and I do them better than, and I'm particularly proud of the way in which I do them. I think it's pretty cool. Figure out what that list is and just get comfortable finding words to describe that so schools get to understand your personality and the things that are important to you. You all have an admission counselor, someone who's responsible for helping you through the process. Most schools assign an admission counselor, probably about 80 or 90% of the schools. I'm from Minnesota, so Minnesota used to be my territory. It's not this year, but it will be again in the future. But if you're from Minnesota, this year you connect with Grace. Grace is your admission counselor. Find out who the admission counselor for your school is. Shoot them a quick email and introduce yourself. Easy peasy. It's a great way for them to see your name, start that relationship. So when you apply, that's not the very first time they've ever heard from you or heard of you. Knack Act, the National Association for College Admission Counselors, this is a big umbrella organization for which we're all involved. They measure things that are important to them in the application process, right? And so these are the things that they have colleges rate. Hey, when you read a student, how important is grades in all courses? 75% of the schools said that was of considerable importance, 15% moderate importance, and this is just about a year old. They haven't completed the new one. It's always a couple years behind. So here's the thing that you notice about this is grades, and curriculum, which is grades, are the top three things. If you're going to focus on anything for competitive admission, it is your classes day in and day out and how you perform in those classes. That's more important than test scores, your essay, how interested you are, your counselor rec. It is your transcript. In fact, if you look historically, that has been important since 2007 all the way to 2018. That's been at least 70%. And the same for grades in all courses and strength of curriculum. It doesn't change a whole lot. What did change is class rank. That went from 23 to 9. Another thing that's interesting is demonstrated interest. That went from 22 to 16, right? So the thing about demonstrated interest is it's letting a school know you're interested by reaching out, by contacting them, by connecting with them. The biggest way that you show demonstrated interest is by applying early decision. You apply early, you find out early, you say that you're coming. Yay, you know he's coming to read. If you apply early decision, the admit rates for early decision are twice as high than for us, for people who apply for other decisions, because it's showing great interest, and many schools have that as an option. Your applications will often have what's called a supplement. So you have the application, and then we at Read say, hey, we also want to know these other things that aren't on the application. And one of those is there's often a question there, and it's something like, why do you want to go to Read? Now, for us, this additional question is, what would you teach during Paideia, which is a time on campus where anyone can teach a class and offer it to anyone. Like I teach a conflict resolution class. I teach a comic book class because I collect comic books. But it used to be why Read, and what we found out was like people who visited Read or had family who went to Read would have an answer, and the answer was awesome. But then people who hadn't gotten to Read or had family here, but were legitimately interested, we'd be like, oh, their answer sounds like the website. Well, of course it does, because that's their resource. And so we were unintentionally penalizing people just because they couldn't get to campus. And we were like, okay, what's really important for us? And we said, we like people who display some sort of intellectual passion or get excited about something. And we think that everyone can get excited about something that you would teach. Because you wouldn't teach, comic books excite me. And so I could tell you a whole lot about it. And that excitement is contagious. Why do we have an essay? An essay is not to talk about the activities you've shared on your activities list. It's not to talk about your grades. It's to talk about who you are beyond the grades. So it's your conversation with the committee. You're not going to be with me when I'm presenting your application, but your essay is you talking to a group of people who are making that critical decision. You're talking to a panel. So think about it that way. That usually helps. Recommendations are a big deal. Recommendations can either, if you look at that chart, they're actually pretty low. Your goal with recommendations is to understand there's like a middle, let's just say 75%. Your goal is to stay out of the bottom 15% and to push your essay into the top 10%. If it's in the middle, you're fine. It's a push, right? It's not going to hurt anyone. But if you can get your essay to the top 10%, it's going to make a difference in your application. So how do you get in the top 10%? You do something like this. You go to a teacher who knows you, not just someone who's popular, but who knows you well. Your teachers are your advocates. They tell me what you were like when you're in class. Your grades tell me how you performed, but they tell me if you ask questions, if you're engaging, if you help people, if you're quiet, if you're talkative. But they help me understand your best self in the classroom. They're the only people who can do that. And so if you go to this teacher and you say to them, Mr. Hansen, I'm applying to this school. It's incredibly important for me. And I know that your recommendation could be the difference maker for me. And you have an understanding of how I'm in the classroom, my personality, how I'm engaging in the classroom, what I'm like, what I do, what I don't do. Can you write me the best recommendation to help me gain admission to my top colleges? And I promise you, if you do that versus, Mr. Johnson, can you fill this out? Peace. Then they're going to dig deep and they're going to write you the best blasted recommendation that they can. And if they can't, they will let you know. And it's a gift, y'all. If they say I can't do it, say thank you. They're being really honest and saying I can't write you the best recommendation. And it's okay to ask someone else. So interview and visits. Here's the biggest thing about the interview. Find out beforehand if it's an interview with an admission counselor or if it's an interview with a student. That's going to be a different experience. And do not assume that an interview with a student is going to be less formal. Sometimes students are actually a little bit more critical in interviews because it's their college. And then there's 3 types of interviews: informational, evaluative, and the third one is a combination of the 2. Informational, hey, I just have a bunch of questions, I want them answered. Done and done. Evaluative, they're actually evaluating you on whether or not you'd be a good fit for the college. And if that's the case, you want to come prepared with questions, ready to answer questions, ready to ask questions. And that's going to be important for you to know that walking into it so you can be well prepared. At the end, when you have to decide where to go, people are going to be saying, where do you want to go? Where do you want to spend the rest of your years? And you're like, I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. Take a week in like April and just say, this week I'm going to decide not to decide. I will not choose a school. And it's interesting, over the course of that week, a school is just going to percolate to the top. And that's the place you're probably meant to be.